Most people don't realize how much power they lose every time they explain themselves. You justify your choices. You clarify your intentions. You defend your boundaries. And slowly, without noticing, you hand your authority to the opinions of others. Stoic philosophy saw this clearly centuries ago. Epictetus warned that the moment you seek approval, you become dependent. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself not to waste time arguing about how a good person should live, but to live it. Yet today, you're taught the opposite. Explain more, prove yourself, make sure everyone understands you. But clarity doesn't come from words, it comes from consistency, from calm action, from silence backed by self-respect. In this video, you'll discover why everything changes when you stop explaining yourself. How silence reveals intentions, how boundaries become stronger, and how you regain control without raising your voice. Stay with me, because when you no longer beg to be understood, you finally become unshakable. This is where strength begins. Part 1. The moment you stop explaining, you reclaim your authority. You don't lose power in a dramatic collapse. You lose it quietly, sentence by sentence, explanation by explanation. Each time you justify a choice that was already yours to make, you step a little further away from yourself. Each time you soften a boundary so it sounds acceptable, you trade clarity for approval. Over time, without noticing, you teach the world how to treat you. Most people believe explaining themselves makes them reasonable and mature. In truth, it often does the opposite. It places you in a defensive position, as if your life decisions require validation. The moment you start explaining, you're no longer standing in authority, you are standing in permission. Stoic philosophy warned against this long before modern language existed for it. Epictetus taught that your duty ends with your judgment and your action. What others think of those actions is not your responsibility. When you feel compelled to explain yourself, pause. Ask whether you are clarifying facts or quietly asking to be accepted. More often than not, explanation is driven by fear. Fear of being misunderstood, fear of conflict, fear of disappointing someone, fear of losing connection. These fears are human, but they are costly. They push you to speak when silence would protect your strength. Over-explaining does not create peace. It creates negotiation. It turns firm decisions into open discussions and invites people to test how solid you really are. Even kind people do this unconsciously. Human beings are drawn to certainty and curious about weakness. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself not to waste time arguing about how a good person should live, but to live it. That line cuts deep. Defending and justifying are often disguised attempts to earn permission to exist as you choose. But your life is not a courtroom, and you do not need to present evidence to be free. Notice the difference in energy between these two statements. The first says, "I can't do this right now because I've been overwhelmed and need to protect my mental health." The second says, "I won't be doing that." One invites questions, the other establishes reality. Stoicism is not about being harsh. It is about being precise, saying what is necessary and stopping there. When you remove defensive explanations and rehearsed justifications, something unexpected happens. Your words become lighter, but your presence becomes heavier. When you stop explaining yourself, people reveal who they are. Those who respect you adjust. Those who relied on your self-doubt become uncomfortable. Some push, some withdraw. This is not a loss. It is clear. There is also a quiet shift inside you. Your mind slows down. You stop replaying conversations. You release the burden of managing how others interpret your choices. In that space, self-trust grows. You begin to act instead of explain. Your boundaries become cleaner. Your yes becomes deliberate. Your no becomes final. People feel your limits without you announcing them. This is inner authority, not dominance. Self-command. A Stoic does not argue for his worth. He lives in alignment with his values and lets the world respond. Dignity is not negotiated, it is embodied. When you stop explaining yourself, you stop shrinking to be understood. You stop standing trial in invisible courtrooms. You stop negotiating your right to choose. Your presence changes. Not because you said more, but because you finally said enough. This shift is subtle at first, but once felt, you will never willingly return to the exhausting habit of explaining who you are to anyone ever again without regret. Part 2. Silence reveals. Intentions, faster than words, ever will. When you stop explaining yourself, something unsettling begins to happen. The noise disappears, the excuses vanish, and in that quiet space, people's true intentions start to surface, often faster than you expected and clearer than you were prepared for. Most people talk when they feel uneasy. They explain smooth tension, to fill gaps, to manage reactions. Words become a shield, a distraction, a way to stay in control of how others perceive them. But when you choose silence instead, you remove that shield, and without it, reality has nowhere to hide. Stoic philosophy understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius warned against being hypnotized by what people say instead of what they do. Words are easy, behavior is costly. Silence forces behavior to step forward. When you stop explaining, those who genuinely respect you adjust. They may not fully understand your reasons, but they don't demand access to them. They don't interrogate your choices. They accept your boundaries without drama. Their respect was never conditional on your self-doubt. Others respond very differently. Some grow uncomfortable. Some press harder. Some accuse you of being distant, cold, or not like you used to be. These reactions are not misunderstandings. They are disclosures. They reveal who relied on your explanations to maintain influence over you. This is one of the hardest truths to face. Many people were not attached to you, but to the access they had to your energy, your justifications, your emotional labor. Your explanations gave them leverage. They could argue, guilt, or negotiate their way past your limits. When you remove explanations, that leverage disappears, and so does their sense of control. This is why silence feels threatening to certain people. It denies them the tools they once used to shape your decisions. It forces them to confront a version of you that no longer seeks approval. That shift alone is enough to expose fragile dynamics that words once concealed. Stoicism does not teach cruelty or detachment for its own sake. It teaches clarity. When you stop explaining, you stop rescuing people from their own reactions. You stop cushioning their discomfort. You return emotional responsibility to where it belongs. That is not coldness, that is maturity. There is another transformation that happens quietly within you. You begin to separate words from truth. You notice how easily people speak fairness while acting selfishly. You see how often someone sounds supportive until they no longer get their way. Silence sharpens this perception. Patterns emerge quickly when you stop feeding conversations with explanations. Who remains consistent when you say less? Who respects your limits without needing persuasion? Who only engages when you justify yourself? These patterns tell you more than any heartfelt conversation ever could. Epictetus taught that freedom begins the moment you stop reacting to what is outside your control. Silence is one of the fastest ways to practice that freedom. You stop performing, you stop defending, you stop negotiating your worth. Instead, you observe. And observation changes everything. You begin to notice that many conflicts were never about misunderstanding. They were about access. When access is removed, the conflict reveals its true shape. Some people step closer with respect. Others step away in frustration. Both outcomes bring clarity. Silence does not destroy relationships, it tests them. And as that test unfolds, something inside you steadies. You no longer guess how others feel. You no longer hope your explanations will finally make things right. You stop chasing alignment through words. You allow alignment to prove itself through action. This is the Stoic shift, from persuasion to perception, from explanation to understanding. You learn to trust patterns over promises, and once you see people clearly, the need to explain yourself fades naturally. Because clarity no longer comes from speaking, it comes from watching. Part 3. Explaining yourself is often fear disguised as clarity. Most people believe they explain themselves because they value honesty, because they want to be clear, because they want to avoid misunderstanding. But if you look closely, brutally honestly, you'll notice that explanation is often not born from clarity. It is born from fear. Fear rarely announces itself directly. It disguises itself as politeness, as reasonableness, as emotional intelligence. You tell yourself you're just being open, just being considerate, just helping others understand. Yet underneath those words, there is often a quiet anxiety asking, will you still accept me if I don't justify this? Stoicism cuts through that illusion. Epictetus taught that disturbance does not come from events, but from the judgments we attach to them. When you feel the urge to over-explain, the disturbance is already there. The explanation is not the cause. It is a symptom. Fear of being misunderstood, fear of being disliked, fear of being seen as selfish, fear of standing alone in your decision. So you talk, you add context, you soften edges, you build a story that makes your choice sound more acceptable, more reasonable, more defensible. But in doing so, you quietly betray yourself. Because a choice that needs constant justification is a choice you don't fully trust yet. This is uncomfortable to admit. But it is liberating once you see it. Clarity is simple. Fear is verbose. A clear person does not rush to explain. They state what is true and allow silence to follow. A fearful person fills that silence immediately, afraid of what might happen if they don't. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that the strength of a person is revealed in how little they need to say. Not because silence is superior, but because unnecessary speech often reveals inner unrest. The calmer the mind, the fewer words it needs. Notice when explanations spill out of you without being asked for. That urgency is not generosity. It is anxiety seeking relief. You're trying to manage perception instead of standing in truth. And perception is never fully controllable. This is why explaining yourself can become exhausting. No matter how carefully you choose your words, someone will still misunderstand. Someone will still judge. Someone will still disagree. And every time that happens, fear tightens its grip and pushes you to explain even more. It becomes a cycle. Explain. Hope for understanding. Feel disappointed. Explain again. Stoicism breaks this cycle at its root. It teaches you to accept a difficult truth. Being misunderstood is not a failure of character. It is often the price of independence. When you stop explaining from fear, you begin to explain only when explanation truly serves a purpose. Not to convince, not to soothe egos, but to exchange necessary information. Nothing more. This shift changes your internal posture. You stop leaning forward emotionally. You stop trying to close every gap. You allow space to exist without rushing to fill it. And in that space, fear loses its voice. You realize something quietly powerful. You can survive discomfort. You can survive someone's confusion. You can survive disapproval. None of these things are fatal to your integrity. What is damaging is living in constant self-betrayal, editing yourself to be digestible, explaining yourself to be safe, shrinking yourself to be accepted. Stoicism does not demand that you become insensitive. It asks that you become honest about where your words are coming from. Are you explaining because clarity is required, or because fear is uncomfortable? That distinction matters. When you act from clarity, your words are brief and grounded. When you act from fear, your words become layered, emotional, and defensive. The body knows the difference. The mind feels it immediately. As you practice this awareness, something stabilizes inside you. You stop reacting to imagined judgments. You stop preemptively defending yourself against criticisms that haven't even appeared. You become still. And from that stillness, a new kind of confidence grows, not loud, not performative, not aggressive. Quiet, rooted, unmoved. You no longer explain how to feel safe. You feel safe because you no longer need to explain. This is not indifference. This is self-trust. And once fear no longer runs your words, your silence becomes calm, your speech becomes deliberate, and your presence becomes unmistakably solid. Part 4. When you stop explaining, emotional manipulation loses its power. One of the least talked about reasons people over-explain is this. Explaining feels like protection. You believe that if you give enough reasons, enough context, enough emotional detail, you can prevent conflict, guilt, or punishment. But what you are really doing is feeding a system that survives on your reactions. Emotional manipulation does not begin with cruelty. It begins with access. Access to your emotions, access to your uncertainty, access to your need to be understood, and explanations provide all three. When you explain yourself, you give manipulators something to work with. They don't need to attack you directly. They can question your reasons. They can reinterpret your tone. They can make your clarity sound selfish, your boundaries sound harsh, your decisions sound unfair. The conversation shifts away from what you chose and toward how justified you are in choosing it. This is not an accident. It is a pattern. Stoic philosophy warns against this subtle loss of control. Epictetus made it clear that the moment you allow others to govern your emotional state, you surrender your freedom. And nothing gives others more leverage than your need to defend yourself. Manipulation thrives on engagement, on explanation, on emotional back and forth. When you stop explaining, you cut off the supply. At first, this can feel uncomfortable. Silence feels exposed. You may worry that others will misinterpret you, that they will label you cold, unfair, or unkind. But notice something important. People who rely on manipulation often become louder when explanations disappear. They escalate. They repeat questions you've already answered. They provoke emotional responses. They accuse you of changing. These are not attempts at understanding. They are attempts to regain control. Marcus Aurelius wrote that you should never be surprised when people act according to their nature. When explanations no longer work, those who depended on them reveal exactly who they are. Silence accelerates that revelation. This is why stopping explanations feels like a confrontation, even when you say nothing at all. You're no longer participating in the emotional transaction. You are no longer bargaining for peace with your energy. And here is the Stoic truth that changes everything. You are not responsible for regulating other people's feelings. When you explain yourself to calm someone down, you're taking on a role that was never yours. You become the caretaker of their discomfort. Silence returns that responsibility to where it belongs. This does not mean you become unkind. It means you become clear. A manipulative dynamic depends on confusion, on blurred lines, on endless conversations that go nowhere but drain you. Silence brings definition. It forces interactions to either become respectful or collapse. And if a relationship collapses when you stop explaining yourself, it was not built on mutual respect. It was built on access to your compliance. That realization can hurt, but it is also freeing. As you stop explaining, you will notice a shift inside yourself. You no longer feel pulled into emotional debates. You no longer feel the urge to defend your character. You stop rehearsing arguments in your head long after conversations end. Your nervous system begins to calm. You respond instead of react. You choose instead of justify. You remain steady while others reveal instability. This is not emotional withdrawal. It is emotional sovereignty. Stoicism does not teach you to shut people out. It teaches you to stop being ruled by their reactions. When you withdraw explanations, you withdraw leverage. When you withdraw leverage, manipulation loses its grip. Over time, people adjust. Some learn to respect your boundaries. Some step away. Some attempt one last emotional pull and then fade. All outcomes bring clarity, and clarity restores power. You begin to realize something profound. Silence is not passive. It is active restraint. It is the discipline of not giving away what others have not earned. When you stop explaining yourself, you stop negotiating your inner peace. You stop proving that your boundaries are valid. You simply live them, and in doing so, you become difficult to manipulate. Not because you are guarded, but because you are grounded. That is the Stoic advantage. Not control over others. Control over yourself. Part 5. Your boundaries become felt, not debated. When you explain your boundaries too much, you turn them into topics for discussion instead of realities to be respected. You think you are being fair, considerate, and mature. But in practice, excessive explanation weakens the very limits you are trying to protect. Boundaries are not arguments, they are statements of truth. Stoicism teaches that a boundary does not need approval to exist. It only needs consistency. The moment you feel compelled to justify a limit, you invite others to test it. You turn something firm into something flexible. And flexibility is exactly what people push against. When you stop explaining, your boundaries change character. They stop sounding like requests and start feeling like facts, not harsh facts. Calm ones. The kind that don't need reinforcement because they are not negotiable. Think about how often people argue with boundaries that are over-explained. They dissect your reasons, they challenge your emotions, they suggest alternatives, not because they don't understand, but because they sense uncertainty. And uncertainty invites pressure. Marcus Aurelius wrote that you should act according to your nature and let others respond as they will. A boundary stated once, clearly and without emotional padding carries more weight than a long explanation ever could. This shift can feel uncomfortable at first. Silence after stating a boundary can feel awkward. You may feel rude. You may feel exposed. But what you are actually feeling is the absence of old habits. The habit of softening, of reassurance, of making yourself smaller so others stay comfortable. When you stop doing that, people feel the difference immediately. Some respect it without question. Others push harder, hoping you will return to explaining. This is the moment where many people break. They mistake pressure for proof that they need to clarify more. But Stoicism teaches the opposite. Pressure is confirmation that the boundary is necessary. A boundary that survives pressure becomes real. As you hold your line without explanation, something changes inside you. You begin to trust yourself. You realize that you don't need perfect wording to be respected. You need alignment. Words matter less than repetition. Consistency speaks louder than justification. Over time, people stop asking why. They start adjusting how they behave around you. Your limits become felt rather than discussed. Your presence carries a quiet firmness that requires no defense. This does not mean you become rigid or unkind. It means you stop treating your inner limits as negotiable contracts. You stop offering emotional discounts to avoid discomfort. Stoicism is not about withdrawing from relationships. It is about engaging from a place of self-command. When you stop explaining your boundaries, you stop teaching others that your needs are optional. And this is where dignity returns. You no longer brace yourself before saying no. You no longer rehearse justifications in your mind. You say what is true, and you let it stand. Some people will like this version of you more. Some will like it less. But either way, the relationship becomes honest, and honesty, even when it costs something, is always cheaper than self-betrayal. When your boundaries are felt rather than debated, your energy changes. You move through conversations with less tension. You stop fearing confrontation. You stop leaking power through unnecessary explanations. You stand where you are, and that quiet stance becomes your strongest signal. Part 6. You begin living by values, not by approval. When you stop explaining yourself, you cross a quiet but irreversible line. You move from living in reaction to living in alignment. Your decisions are no longer shaped by how they will be received, but by whether they reflect what you truly value. Most people do not realize how much of their life is driven by approval, not loud approval, subtle approval, the nod, the silence, the absence of conflict. So they explain themselves to soften rejection before it arrives. They adjust their words to remain acceptable. Over time, approval becomes the invisible compass guiding their choices. Stoicism calls this a dangerous trade. Epictetus warned that if you want freedom, you must accept the cost of displeasing others. When you explain yourself compulsively, you are often paying for peace with integrity. You tell yourself it is temporary, but the habit grows. Slowly, your values become flexible, shaped by reactions rather than principles. When you stop explaining, that pattern breaks. You begin to ask a different question before acting. Not, will they understand? But is this consistent with who I choose to be? This shift is small, but its impact is profound. Decisions become simpler, not easier, but cleaner. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that a person should act in accordance with nature and reason, not applause. Applause fades. Values remain. When your actions align with your values, you no longer need to defend them. Defense is only necessary when you doubt yourself. Living by values does not mean you stop caring about others. It means you stop letting their reactions define you. You listen without bending. You remain open without being porous. You engage without abandoning yourself. This creates a different kind of confidence, not the loud confidence that demands attention, but the grounded confidence that does not seek it. People feel this shift immediately. Your words carry less urgency. Your decisions carry more weight. Some relationships will change. Approval-based connections weaken when explanations disappear. They were built on reassurance and emotional negotiation. Without that structure, they collapse. This can feel like loss, but it is alignment correcting itself. What remains are relationships rooted in respect. As you live more deeply by your values, your need to explain continues to fade. You trust your inner compass. You stop rehearsing conversations that will never happen. You stop arguing with imagined critics in your mind. Your energy returns to you. Stoicism never promised comfort. It promised clarity. Living by values brings clarity. You know why you act. You know where you stand. You know what you will not compromise. That knowledge creates inner stillness, and stillness is powerful. When approval no longer drives you, fear loosens its grip. You are no longer chasing acceptance. You are embodying consistency. Over time, people either adjust to your steadiness or remove themselves from your path. Both outcomes are honest. You realize something quietly liberating. You do not need to be understood to be aligned. You do not need agreement to be at peace. You do not need permission to live truthfully. This is the Stoic reward, not admiration, not control, but freedom. When you stop explaining yourself, you stop negotiating your values. You live them, and that is when your life begins to feel lighter, cleaner, and unmistakably your own. When you stop explaining yourself, everything truly changes. You reclaim your authority instead of placing your life on trial. Silence reveals intentions more clearly than words ever could. You recognize how often explanation is driven by fear, not clarity. Emotional manipulation loses its grip. Your boundaries are no longer debated, only felt. And most importantly, you begin living by your values rather than chasing approval. This is the Stoic shift, from reaction to self-command. Remember, Stoicism does not teach you to be cold or distant. It teaches you to be grounded. You are not responsible for managing how others interpret your choices. You are responsible only for acting with integrity, consistency, and inner discipline. Here is a simple practice. For the next 24 hours, resist the urge to over-explain. State what is true, then stop. Observe how people respond and how you feel inside. That awareness alone will teach you more than any argument ever could. Thank you for spending this time with me. If this reflection resonated, take it with you into your next conversation. And I'll see you in the next video, where we continue exploring the quiet power of Stoic philosophy.